Hello, everybody. This is the first video lecture for the next 2 weeks of the 4 video lectures I'm going to give because of quarantine, that I'm in quarantine now. Basically what I'll be doing is, speaking to you on a screen right now, like as if I was in person, but I'll also, be putting the PowerPoint slides up on the screen that you're going to be looking at right now, right up on the video, and then also putting those PowerPoint slides up online as I post the video as well, so you can have both of them together. But you'll see me talking in a little screen, and then you'll see the PowerPoint slide in a big part of your screen. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say about today's lecture is, my plan was to actually have a kind of an activity where we talk about research methods, and obviously we can't do that. And so today's lecture probably be a bit shorter than a typical lecture. And I think it'll probably actually be pretty quick because we can't do the activity, unfortunately. And so let me kind of just jump right in and get going. Okay, so I'm going to share the PowerPoint screen. Okay, so one of the first things I want to just mention, fix my video down here so you can all see me properly. Okay, so one of the first things I wanted to mention was, the second preliminary document that was due by this Friday, 11 p.m. that you hand in through Moodle. So, basically now what you've done is you picked your topic and you picked, done a little bit of a literature review. Now your goal is to come up with a question, right? So you want to describe the kind of paradigm, that theoretical approach that you're using. Right, so paradigm is a scientific worldview, that kind of general framework is a set of solutions, and importantly, it's a new set of problems to solve, so that your paradigm will kind of lead you to, a new question, lead you to the question you want to ask, right? And so, you can pick from one of these paradigms. These are some pretty basic paradigms. There's many others in sociology. Think about the theoretical approaches that you're learning or have learned in your theory classes, if you've hopefully taken that so far. And so then you want to come up with a question, right? A question that is focused and clear, right? You want to be able to say to somebody, this is the question, this is what it means, and they they understand it right away. It's something that you can feasibly research, not an ethical question, not a philosophical question, a research question, a question that you could, spend the next 5-6 months, a year, maybe a year and a half doing research on, but you could complete it. You could find something, you could try to answer this question. Not simply a yes or no question, something a little bit more meat to it, something that you can, really delve in and find some interesting things. And then more than one plausible answer, right? So you don't want to already presume that you know what the answer is. You want it to be a real question. You want to be like, well, I don't know what is out there. And so you want to have a range of possible answers that you could find. And then lastly, you want it to be to a certain degree be relevant, be kind of an important question, not just important to you, but useful or important to other people, right? Why should other people read the research, read the article that you're going to produce from this research? And so, right, all this is due by this Friday. You don't have to talk. It's not a long, in terms of writing, it's not a lot of work. You simply have to say, okay, this is my paradigm. Maybe give a couple of sentences describing why you picked that paradigm. I picked conflict theory because, this is the way I see the world, et cetera, et cetera. Then come up with a research question, write the question out, and then maybe spend, 3 or 4 sentences, maybe a paragraph or so, describing that question. Why did you pick it? Why do you think that's important? How is it based on the gap in your literature? And kind of discover it. So this one shouldn't be more than a page, I imagine. You can go longer if you want. So while there's not a lot of writing, there is a lot of thinking. You really want to pick a good question. And I will really try to give people feedback on this document and the previous one. Things have shifted with all this quarantine, so it's actually producing more work for me. Okay, so that's the a goal or assignment for this Friday, 11 p.m. If you have questions about it, please email me, and I will get back to you. Okay, so before the midterm, we were looking at this research process step by step, and we have gone through basically the whole process from finding a research topic to all the way to getting a question, to figuring out your sample, to writing up a report. Now we actually have one more important part or step to talk about. And that's actually selecting a research method, right? That's actually a big part of it. And so what we're going to find is that in sociology and in many social sciences, there are many different methods that a person can use. And so that's actually what their third part of our class is going to be on, right? It's going to be on the different social science methods. And so we're going to be kind of in the future classes, we're going to be going through each of these methods kind of as a full class. All right, so that's what we're doing. So for today, on today's lecture, what I'm going to be talking about is giving an overview of these different research methods, talk about the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. That's a little bit of a divide within the field of social sciences and in sociology. And then also talk about nomothetic versus idiographic research, which is also another kind of like debate or question within the field of sociology. Okay, so now let me kind of go over and talk about the various different research methods that sociologists use. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to doing a full class on each one of these methods. And you will see that I personally have used about three or four of these methods. And so in a couple of examples, what I've done is I have talked about my own research experience because I think that's more interesting and I know it the best. But let's start going through the methods. Okay, so first off, we have qualitative interviews. This is where you create a set of questions, right? And you sit down with somebody and you try to interview them. You try to get them to open up and talk to you about what they're thinking, what their behavior is like, right? If we as social scientists are trying to understand humans, one of the best things to do is go talk to them, right? Go, have a really get in-depth, interview with them and talk to them. It's not really a conversation. It's not like having a conversation with your friend. It's a conversation with a purpose, right? You're trying to find out information, right? But you do, a series of these interviews, and that becomes your data. Ethnographies, participant observations. There's kind of a big overlap in these. So an ethnography is essentially when the researcher goes and lives the life of their subjects, right? They become part of that social group. They become a participant, and then they also observe, right? And so, it's really a method in which a person kind of develops a kind of a really in-depth understanding of their subjects, the people that they're studying, by living their life with them, right? So for example, if you were you want to understand biker gangs, right? You would go and join a biker gang. That's how you would understand them, see it from the inside and really try to understand them. So it's similar to, in some sense, qualitative interviews, but now more in depth. People will spend a year, 2 years living with the social group that they're studying. And it tends to be this kind of, big product at the end of the book or something. Then we have case studies. So a case study, again, is similar, a little bit similar to ethnographies and interviews in that you're getting an in-depth analysis, but now it's an in-depth analysis of one particular case, one event, right? One particular phenomenon in the world, right? And so really, we're going to see this later when we talk about idiographic and nomothetic. But now your goal is not to understand some general phenomenon like biker gangs or inequality or something like that. Now you want to know all the details about a specific case, right? A specific event, or some other circumstance, right? So, for example, there is kind of a famous sociological study of the Challenger accident, the Challenger disaster, the spaceship that blew up in the 1990s, and why and how that happened. And that, that's kind of a famous kind of sociological analysis case study of a specific event. Next, we have surveys, which is one of the most popular or widely used methods within sociology. Right here, you're asking a number of people, basically a list of questions. And so in that way, it's similar to interviews, but now it's not an in-depth analysis as much, but now you're looking for breadth. Right now you're asking 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people the same set of questions. And that allows you then to analyze their answers, see what the differences are, see what the averages are, and to kind of compare which groups have this answer, which groups have that answer, right? If you want to know, why some people smoke and some people don't, right? Why do they use tobacco? Then you could do a survey and then find out the differences in, the smokers versus the non-smokers. Do some have higher income, lower income, education? Do they have children, not have children, right? And so doing a survey of a number of people, right, thousands of people, allows you to have enough data points to make that analysis, to kind of figure out differences between groups. Comparative historical research, right? So again, one of the things that I do and I'm interested in. Here, the idea is that you're comparing, right? So the world offers many different examples of different societies, many different social groups, right? Japanese society, American society, Australian society, British society, right? And what you can then do then is compare those groups. See what the differences are between nations or even smaller social groups. The differences between different cities or different states in America, right? And so it's comparing, right? Seeing the differences between groups and trying to understand, why they're different. For example, why are some countries doing better at handling the coronavirus than other countries? Right? We know countries like New Zealand, for example, are doing extremely well, whereas countries like America are doing much less well, right? And so the question is, why, right? And so we're comparing countries to understand that. One way to understand that, do that comparison, is to look at their histories, right? So that's why it's comparative historical. To understand, well, these countries are different because their histories, their past, have brought them to different places. Content analysis. So content analysis is basically where you are examining social artifacts. So if you remember all the way back to unit of analysis, right? Social artifacts are the things that humans produce. Books, other media, TV shows, comic books, computer games, right? The cultural objects of humans. And you're basically examining that media, that content, to understand something about humans themselves, right? And so you're examining that content. Lastly, a series of research methods that's less widely used in sociology. That would be experiments, conversation analysis, and focus groups. These are actually more popular to a certain degree within psychology, particularly experiments. These are still useful methods in certain circumstances, but they just tend to be less widely used within sociology. The last thing I would say is, right, it's not as if one method is better than the other, right? You don't have to choose the best method. The issue here is that you want to choose the right method for your question, right, for your research, right? That some methods will be more suitable to certain questions, to certain research than other methods. So it's not as if, surveys are better than interviews or content analysis is better than a case study or something like that. Rather that you have a specific question and then you say, okay, well, what's the best method I can pick to get at this question? All right, so that's a kind of an overview of the different methods that we will be looking at the next few weeks. Now we can kind of delve into two debates. The first debate is the debate over quantitative versus qualitative research. And this is kind of a rough divide within sociology. It's not really a debate. What you find is that some researchers prefer some methods over others, and so that people kind of get into their camps a little bit. But again, it's not as if quantitative is better than qualitative or vice versa, but rather you want to pick the right approach for your question. Right, let's see what the basic difference is between them though. So we can start with quantitative research. So quantitative research is basically research that uses numerical data, right? That it quantifies things, meaning that it turns the data, right, the interviews, the surveys, the whatever, the content analysis, into some form of numerical data, right? And so it's quantifying, right? It's turning it into math, right, into numbers, so that then you can use statistical analysis to analyze that data. And so essentially quantitative research really goes hand in hand with statistical research. Right. And so a classic example of this is, survey research, right? So as I mentioned before, you're asking, thousands of people their opinions about the different, their different beliefs or views. Do you support President Trump or do you support Vice President Biden, right, in the next election? And you do statistical analysis to find out, who has more support and, why some groups are supporting one or the other, right? And so quantitative research essentially is turning your data into numbers. Qualitative research, on the other hand, is not doing that, right? Qualitative research does not turn it into numbers. Rather, it keeps it as whatever the data you have, right? And so basically the difference is a little bit of the emphasis. Quantitative research is looking for breadth, right? A wide range of data points, right? Many, many, many data points. And so that then you can turn them into numbers and use statistical analysis to understand them. Qualitative research, on the other hand, is looking for depth, right? A rich description. You really want to really know your subjects, really know your case, right? And so the classic example here is, rather than surveys, is an ethnography. Right? You're going to follow one social group, one gang, one group of accountants, one set of doctors, whoever it is you're studying. You're going to follow them and live in their world for like a year or 2 years, and you're going to have a really in-depth understanding of how they live and how they see the world. And so it's a really different focus, right? That here with qualitative research, you're really kind of getting a rich description. Lastly, we can talk about a mixed method design. This basically says, okay, look, it's, to really understand what I'm researching, I can't choose either quantitative or qualitative. I have to do both, right? I have to have a mixed method, right? I have to have quantitative research and qualitative research. That quantitative will get at some of the answers and qualitative will get at some of the other answers. Quantitative will give me breadth and qualitative will give me depth, right? And so an example of this is content analysis. So let's say we analyze a series of magazines, right? And we are trying to find something out about, say, gender, right? What we can do is we can count, right? We can count the number of words that appear in that magazine. We can count the number of subjects that come up, right? We can quantify it. But also we can really read all these magazines and come up with a rich description. We can examine it and really understand, what are these magazines telling us in words? Don't just turn it into the numbers, but also see what the words are saying themselves. And so it basically, this mixed method design is coming at it from two different angles, quantitative and qualitative, and saying, well, you're covering all the ground. And so these are some basic divides within the um, field of sociology, right? That it's quantitative research that turns things into numbers, qualitative research that does not, and instead does a rich description, and mixed method that tries to do both. One more debate. The nomothetic versus idiographic research. We saw this a little bit earlier in the first week class when we was talking about what is science. And so again, this is kind of a little bit of a debate within the field of sociology. What's the purpose of sociology? What should sociology be trying to do? So let me now describe what the difference is between nomothetic and idiographic. So nomothetic research is research that tends to try to create general laws, right? It tends to say, I want to find out general social patterns of a wide range of people, right? So it's really looking for what we call generalizability, right? It wants to find, understand the social behaviors, the social actions of a number of people, a number of individuals, across a number of cases, right? And so it's really trying to find the general laws of human behavior or social behavior, right? In this way, it's very similar to the natural sciences. This is nomothetic is the approach of biology and astronomy, right? It really wants to understand, the general laws of the physical or natural world, right? And so when social scientists adopt this nomothetic research, they're really kind of in some sense adopting the approach of the natural sciences. Okay? Tends to be quantitative, right? This is generalizability, getting data from a large number of people, right? So it tends to be saying, okay, let's quantify, let's find out the numbers, and then we can find out some general laws about all Americans or all people, right? And so really here the goal is to use research to find general laws, to like large scale generalizations. Right? Tends to be macro oriented. And in this way, we can see that this is one of the aspects of what is science supposed to be, right? It's supposed to find these general laws theoretically, right? That's when scientists think of science, this is what they think, right? That they're out to find the general laws of the world, right? And so when you adopt a nomothetic approach, that you're doing this kind of classic or classical scientific approach of finding a general law. Okay, that's nomothetic. What we also have then is idiographic. And so idiographic is almost the opposite. Rather than finding the social patterns of a large number of cases, generalizability, idiographic is focused on a specific case or a specific event. Right? Example here is a case study, right? You want to find out, not about why all spaceships or why all disasters happen. You want to find out about a specific disaster like the Challenger spaceship that blew up, right? And so an idiographic is a more individual description of a specific event or a specific case, right? And so it's really, again, it's focused on a kind of a rich description. And so in this way, it tends to be more qualitative, right? It tends to say, look, if we want to find out about this one specific event, just getting some numerical data is not going to be good enough. We really want to have a thick, rich description. Right? And so this is really the debate. It is a bit of a debate within the field. Some people say, social science is a science and it should really be focused on creating general laws, and so our focus should not be on specific events but general patterns of social behavior. But other social scientists argue, no, there's room to be idiographic. That it doesn't all have to be about general laws. Maybe sometimes we want to understand specific events, specific circumstances, right? And the argument would be that even natural scientists do this. So take astronomers. Yes, astronomers want to understand asteroids and planets and astronomical events, but sometimes they also want to understand Jupiter, right? They focus on a specific planet and they say, okay, I want to understand everything I can about this one specific planet, right? And so being idiographic does not make you less scientific. It's just a different version or different format of science. So personally, I would say, yes, there's room for both, right? That we can, as social science, adopt nomothetic research that finds general laws, but also adopt idiographic research that looks at explaining and understanding specific cases. Okay, so that's generally it for today. On Thursday, I will be sending out another video that describes interviews, and I'll be talking about my own research.